And I'd like to say it's a great pleasure to introduce our first speaker, Kenneth Balfelt, who is a visual artist based in Denmark, who uses art as a platform for rethinking and developing new methods for urban development, user involvement, development of urban situations, and inclusion of socially marginalized people. Kenneth Balfelt team do public art projects, exhibit and publish normative reports to share new and developed methods. And he is here today to speak about the project Park of the People, or Folkets Park, where Kenneth was hired as an artist to develop and renovate the park based on many years of working with marginalized people groups in the public space. Welcome, Kenneth.
Tak. Ja, skal jeg gøre. Tusind tak. Okay, I'm gonna do this in English, although I speak a little bit Swedish. So let's see. Yes. I was hired by the municipality to look at this park, and I'll get into how I was hired in a bit. It was the first project I did where I was hired by a municipality. Before that, I was, only working as an artist, and in this instance, they called me to give me a contract to actually do some proper work for them instead of just appearing on conferences like this. Or doing workshops and different things for the municipality. They decided to hire me for this, but I'll get back to that. So, Folkets Park, and it's not the one in Malmö, it's the one in Copenhagen. And back in the 70s and 80s, it looked like this. And as you might see, there were some leftists that wanted their children to have a playground that looked like a Russian star, Soviet star. Communist star. So that tells a little bit about the context of the place. The thing was that this place was, one of the only parks in that area of Copenhagen where there was a lot of social housing and so on. And there was this house, the Folkets Hus, which was the kind of a left-wing empire in Copenhagen, or still is. So a lot of left-wing activists were there. And through that 30 years up to that, the municipality finally decided there was going to be a park. There was two instances of them trying to sell it off for housing. But the people rejected it. They made civil obedience and locked themselves onto the bulldozers and so on because they wanted to keep this park as a recreational space and not as more housing. So it has this history. But then at and I guess what is it now? 10, 12 years ago, they renovated the park. From this former expression to this new expression, like saying that okay, now we are not gonna hand it over to housing. We're gonna keep it as a park, and they renovated it for 13.5 million Danish kroner, and 3.5 of that million went to that bridge, which everybody hated and didn't understand why it was there. They did do what they called a profound user involvement when they did that park. But with many of these user involvement, it ends up with, 10, 15 older people, maybe pensioners or people who have enough time to go to these meetings. And then it's those people who decide for the whole of the local community what the park should be. And they wanted something to be a bridge between something. So they came up with this idea. And it was, to some extent, I'm not laughing at it, because in a way it was a good idea as a metaphor and also as a practical thing, because they wanted it to be a stage also, and that you could walk amongst the treetops and so on. But that when the engineers saw the drawings from the architect, they said there need to be a fence 1 meter and 20, so it couldn't be used for anything like a stage or anything. So it just was never used for anything. So the park, I mean, it's 4 times bigger than this, or maybe 6 times bigger than this room. It's not that big. I mean, it's a bit bigger, but not that big. It was, you had homeless people, African immigrants, mostly West African immigrants, but also other groups, East European immigrants. You had young brown men, the same color as me and Roxy, who might or might not have been part of gangs, selling hash, whatever. And because of them, you also had the police, Danish police people. And you had these left-wing activists, and you had a playground as well. You also had, people like us, people living there. In Denmark, we call them either the cafe latte segment or the spelt segment. Spelt is an old flower, whatever. And normally there were nobody in the park, but when there were, because people were scared of these brown young men with guns or whatever, but when there were events there and there was a critical mass of people, then people started streaming in, because there were no other spaces around that area, green spaces, so people really wanted to come there, but only when it was safe enough with lots of normal people. But then at some point in time, this is back in, can I see the date? 2012, thank you. It's a bit big up there, yeah. There was an assault on 4 people. There were 4 people that came from Jutland, another part of Denmark, that wanted to go to a concert, and they took a left swing into the park instead of a right swing into a concert hall. And they were like big guys, tattooed, white, short hair, and the brown young men in the gang thought that it was from Hells Angels or whatever, some other conflicting or competing gang. So they assaulted them. They were just tourists going to, people that want to go to a concert. And that was really ugly. People getting into the hospital and so on. So what happened was that the municipality said we're going to spend 3.5 million on renovating the park. And for me, I mean, the story I can kind of gather from this incident is that, when something like this happens, the press calls the mayor, Lord Mayor of Frank, he's called, and say, what are you going to do about safety in the parks? And he's going to think, okay, we're going to have some more safety in this park. This is not good. So he looks in his toolbox and he sees, safety. Okay, man, that's architecture. So we're going to have some architecture in the park, and that will solve the problems. And in doing that, I mean, he knows that it's not going to solve anything, and he gives it on to the administration, and they know it's not going to solve these type of problems, who then call me. So when we got this, just the story was, which was important for me personally, was he called me on the first day of my holiday. I was in the airport, standing there ready with my family to go for 4 weeks on holiday to the beach and everything. And he called me, and they called me and said that, would you like to renovate Folkets Park? I said, well, yes. And then they said, we would like to have 3 drawings, 3 sketches in the beginning of, after the summer holiday. And I said, no, I can't do that. That's not how I work. I mean, as I said before, this was the first time I was hired to do a project that was not an art project with free art money where you can do whatever you want. So this was like you had a customer relationship. And I said, no, that's not how I work. I do user involvement, and then I come up with the right solution. And he was like, okay. And then he said, okay, but we need to be finished with this before the end of the year, budget years in the municipality and so on. And the politicians want to show action. I said, oh, it's not going to happen. It will take at least a year. I was quiet on the phone, and I said, okay, whatever. Can you come to a meeting next week? I said, no, I'm on holiday. I'll come back in 4 weeks. And so, I mean, I'm telling you this because maybe some of you is from the municipality, and just to say that there are some ideas about structures of how to work, and then time frames and how long time things take, that that was kind of confronted with this artist doing it his own way. So what happened was that I hired some architect in, Spectrum Architects, and we made a contract, which I have a small abstract from here. And the thing was that, this is why I'm telling you the holiday story, because I was on the beach then for 4 weeks, and I didn't really need this contract. I had lots of work. I didn't need it. So that was an ideal position for negotiation. You should try that. And then I just thought, I was lying on the beach with cocktails and the children playing, and philosophing about, you know, what should this contract be for me to keep the frame of being an artist and not being a supplier for the municipality. So I was thinking about lots of things, and some of the things we got into the contract was that, we take the second part first, that we work for love and community and not for the commercial aspect of it. So this is probably, to my knowledge, the first time any official parties in Denmark have a contract where love is the aim. And then we said also that we had to be in 100% integrity, professionally and personally. And if you or any of you are lawyers or know anything about this, this means that they cannot ask us for anything that we don't want. And this is really nice to have in a contract. And we should all have that in our contracts. I mean, why should we do something that we don't feel is the right thing to do? But this is how we work as artists. I mean, no artist can send out a painting on or a video screening or whatever and say, you know, that was the strategy of the company, or that was the line of the party, or that was what my boss said I should do, or something. You don't do that. You have to be in integrity with whatever you send out. So this is just part of being an artist. It's nothing, for me, it was nothing new. It was just obvious. And then their lawyer also said, because we had this whole gang thing, and there was a gang war that had just ended, and so on, and she said, you know, as I understand the way you work, you are developing methods, and therefore you cannot say beforehand what the result will be, and we have to write that in the contract. And everybody agreed that. So again, to say that, you know, it's method development, we don't know what the result is going to be. You know, that a municipality signs that and say, here's the money, here's the contract, you can do what you want, if it's fine with you. And we don't know what we're going to get. This is highly unusual. But the good thing about this contract with Copenhagen municipality is that I've worked for 5 other municipalities in Copenhagen, and every time we have contract negotiation, I say, okay, we can, we made this contract with Copenhagen municipality. Maybe we use the same for you. Yeah, that's fine. And so it's been following me ever since. So when we started the project and came out to the community, they were just like, fuck off, you know, we don't need any smart architects or whatever to come here and change our community. We have been working in this community for 30 years. We built it with our own hands and whatever, and we don't need a renovation. It just got renovated like 3 or 4 years ago. It's insane. So we were just like pushed off. And then we said, okay, listen, and this is our contract with the community. We're going to come out to you without any sketches, any ideas, and just listen to you. And we did that for 4 months. And then when we listen to you and understand the context, then we're going to put on our professional cap and translate your inputs into architecture, space design, whatever. And then we can make good results together. So we will respect you first by not coming with any ideas beforehand from our desk, but you will also have to respect us when we put on a professional cap and turn it into something that should be viable technically and whatever spatially and so on. And that was in a way a kind of an icebreaker that they say, okay, let's try it out. So we started by interviewing people, all of these groups. We talked with, in small groups, 1, 3, 5 at the time, for 1.5 hours. I noticed, and maybe you did as well, that every time you have a meeting of an hour, after the last 10 minutes, you begin to get good ideas. And you begin to understand what is actually going on and what you kind of get underneath the surface. So 1.5 hours is a good time for interviews and meetings. And we talked to we had around 30 meetings with around 175 people. And that's not very democratic in an area where there live around 3,000 people, and maybe there are 10,000 people that could be users of this park. But it's very profound. We got really into deep and we talked to all of the groups that kind of had any connections to the park. And this is important also. Because when the municipality, before we came into the picture, they had also gone around to talk to the different groups, except for the homeless people and the young brown men. And those two were the ones who created the most fear and prejudice and anxiety and also conflicts to some extent. And that doesn't work. So we also got written into the contract that we will talk to all groups, no matter their juridical position or something. We framed it that way. So even the criminals, whatever, we would talk to them. And so then, just to say very shortly, we also did bigger meetings but what we did was that we first talked to these groups, smaller groups, understood something really profoundly, and then we wrote a report about it, and then we took a meeting with the larger public, and then we presented it to them, say, we understand from these groups that this is how we should understand the context of your neighborhood and your needs and so on. And then they could adjust it, because in bigger meetings, you don't have profound discussions. We're not going to have any today, I'm sorry. But we will in the groups. So this is a fine mixture, because we know we're not going to have that in bigger forums. Anyway, so when we talked to all these people, we collected it into an analysis, and we asked people about, not what do you want? We asked them about their needs and their analysis of the situation, because they knew the context. Any 11-year-old boy in that neighborhood would understand that context of that park much better than me and the architect would ever do. So they are the super users. They are the ones who understand the context, and we needed that. Why? To create quality. So I want to kind of put that forward, that the reason why we do in user involvement is not to get ownership, or, I mean, that might come out of it, but the reason is to create quality. Because we want to make something that is profoundly based in the needs of the people that are going to use it, and in the actual situation of it, or how we want to change that situation. So, and this report was sent out to everybody on emails and on Facebook pages, put in the local newspaper, so that everybody could see what we were standing on, what our analysis was, and what needs were defined. One of the things we also did was that we put it in the local newspapers and so on. This is from a national newspaper that wrote, but it was the same kind of story, that we saw that there was like only one, because a lot of the residents said there's like all of these hash dealers all the time, and we don't know, we are scared of them, and they're standing there and dealing hash, and there are like sometimes 30 people dealing hash and so on. But we found out there was only one hash dealer that had that district, and he had a boss that owned that district. So nobody else could deal hash there, only this one guy. And we found out also contrary to our prejudice, that all of these 15, 20 brown young men sitting there, some of them had jobs, some of them were unemployed but had an education, some of them were studying, some of them were criminals on the side but not in the gangs, and some of them were in the gang. There was a gang there doing criminal activities, whatever. So we found out there was a very diverse group, and they were there together because they grew up together. They went to kindergarten or whatever together, and school and so on. So they knew each other, so that when they came back from their different places, they just went there and drank a coffee together. But even I, who has no prejudice, thought that all of these 15, 20 guys that were always sitting there were all gang members, because that's the image that the press have kind of given to us. How are we doing on time?
We're doing all right.
What is left?
You have 2 minutes.
Wow. Okay. So the thing is that you had all of these different groups there, and they had prejudice and stories about each other and fear for each other. And what we discovered, and I want to say this, that everything I'm telling now sounds like we had a really good method for doing this, but this is something that we kind of have, I mean, we developed the methods on the go, and this is how I work. And now I can tell about it as if it was a method, but it was the whole way that we did the project, and any project I do, and I think this is a very artistic way of doing things, is that I'm present, and I think, and I reflect. So I go into the situation and I don't know very much about how to do it, because I'm an artist. I'm not an architect or urban planner or social worker or whatever. But so I just, I try to be present and actually listen to what is being said, and think about how to approach it and reflect upon it. This is something we have from art. When we look at a painting, we reflect upon it. We think about, what does this mean? And this is something I've taken into this as well. So with these different groups that have this prejudice with each other, we kind of found out, okay, they are saying this, the young brown men are saying, if you want to make a safe park, because we were transparent about the goal and we told them we need a more safe park. They said, why don't you get families in with kids? Then people will feel much safer. And it was like, everybody thought it should be a really masculine park, but that's what it was. So, but because they said it, you should get families in, we could go to the families and say, the young guys think that you should come into the park, and they want to be really good neighbors. They want you to be around. And they were like, okay, so maybe we could, they got confident through that. So anyway, we shared this, and we made an interest group, steering group. We shared the information with them, discuss it, the analysis. We made conceptual drawings, had new meetings with the steering group. We made finished drawings, more finished drawings of almost finished drawings. We never went to a meeting to share something that was not open. So this is just something, you can't go to a meeting to discuss something if there's not openings for people to change it. We had a last meeting, and then we renovated the park. We turned the bridge into something very different, furniture, playground, and benches that needed benches, and lighting. And this is just my last point, that when we came to, this is the only quarrel kind of we had with the municipality towards our design, that we came with this, said we're going to have zone lighting, and they said all research says that you have to have full lighting to create security. And we were like, well, there are two groups to whom light is not security: the homeless and the young guys smoking cigarettes or hash, and they don't want their parents or parents' friends to see they're smoking hash. So for those groups, especially the homeless, you don't want to sleep in a place that is lit, because you'll get attacked and stolen from and so on. So we really had to argue towards them about how full lighting is not security for everyone. And in the end, we got this zone lighting. It looks very dodgy and dark here. It's just a photo. It seems much more lit than it was before. So you can say that we were the involvement team, and there were the architect and the contractors. Normally those are consecutive teams, one after the other, that hand over. But I don't believe in these handovers because there's a lot of things that get lost. So I insisted that we were part of the whole process. So us who had the users' inputs under our skin, we also participated together with the architect. We also invited the architect to take part in some of the user involvement. So I'm gonna skip this one. There's a film about the project, and there's more on the homepage, and there's a book we made about how to do user involvement from this artistic point of view. So it's all there for you to have a look at. Thank you.
Thank you, Kenneth, for this very inspiring slide. Do we have any questions from the audience? Yes.
I got so extremely provoked by the idea of having 100%. You said your starting point for this with your contract you made. What kind of checkpoints were with the municipality in this project? You have to have a couple of those, and how do you report the thing? How do you proceed from the idea to the actual result?
I mean, internally in our organization or together with the municipality?
In relation to the municipality.
One of the things that we said in the contract also was that the municipality had to participate in some of the user involvement, because I knew that, you know, when you do user involvement, you get, you know, information, and if someone else in the municipality is sitting at a desk, then, you know, reads this information, they might say, you know, we don't want this, we want that. And I didn't want that to happen. So one of the things was that we invited them in to be part of chosen meetings in the municipality, in the user involvement. And we made, like, you know, regular, you know, like you would do status meetings where we reported where are we now, what's happening now. And all of these interest group meetings, the municipality were part of that. They were an interest as well. So they were part of that process as well, these meetings which was like different points. So in a way we were quite close in the process, and they knew what was going on. So the same way that we held the users and the residents of the park in their hands, which in a way is the method summed up, that we didn't, you know, go back and forth and then made our own work. We held each other's hands all the way. They knew how we built up from analysis to drawings to finished design to contractors building it and so on, to use, how it's going to be used. Everything we went through together as the best we could. And we did that with the municipality as well. They were part of the process as well, all the way.
We have one more quick question.
I hope so.
A comment or statement or...
Actually not. Did you complete inside of budget and inside of the time frame? Or did you get delayed or exceed the budget?
Yes, we did within the budget. But the time frame, we made a time frame, but it was kind of, I don't like working with time frames. And the thing is that what I like to do is to work with what needs to be done. And I think what happened was that once we were over the fiscal year, 31st of December, we didn't even finish the contract before in February and so on. So we were way over that budget year, so that wasn't the question anymore. When we were over that, we had this very close relationship with the municipality and so on, and they could understand the steps back and forth, and we took. So it wasn't too much a question of, for them, you know, we had to do it by this and this date. It was a question of that we all understood what had to be done, because we were very profound in our work. And in terms of budget, I think I earned around 46 kroner per hour on this project, because I spent so much time, and we spent so much time on it, which is a learning. I mean, but the thing is that I'm used to, as an artist, that, you know, you get a fee and you don't count hours as architects. I'm glad I'm not have to do that, or lawyers or whatever. I hate it. I would hate, you know, that you know, because what happened, it's a dynamic situation. You don't know what's going to happen. You don't know what's the right thing to do, especially when you develop a new method on the go. You have to be present and see what is happening. So as an artist, I was quite satisfied with the fee I got at that point. It was quite big, comparison to other fees, you know, if you have a show in a museum or whatever. So I was just, you know, working and enjoying it and doing the right thing. I mean, what I felt was the right thing to do. So yeah, I hope that answers the question. But I mean, there was no unsatisfactory situation with the municipality in terms of what we did. They were really, really satisfied with everything we did. It was a major success for them, and there were like 2 mayors and a big boss from the municipality opening the park and taking all the honor for the project, that we as a municipality has done this great user involvement, you know, and but that's how it is.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Kenneth.